Shalom and welcome to Secrets Revealed, the Holy Bible. Today we're looking at Numbers chapter 35, 34 verses, beginning in verse 1. It says here, to the west of Moab, verses in the plains of Moab. Verse 2, they, talking about they shall give to the Levites, as opposed to you shall give to the Levites. So the Septuagint is saying the children of Israel will give to the Levites, the suburbs of the cities, as opposed to the Masoretic saying, no, Moses, you're the one who's giving them uh, the suburbs. We have an addition as well of the word also um, in verse 2, shall give also unto the Levites. So that's actually in brackets, but that wasn't actually in the original Masoretic. So that's the translator's addition. We have a big difference as well. Why I say this is a big difference is because the Masoretic is saying suburbs of the cities round about them. These are suburbs of them versus suburbs for the cities. So this could mean that these are one and the same, the suburbs of the cities. So you're taking the cities, turning them into suburbs, not suburbs. And you're also, or what I should say in the Masoretic, you're not doing that. You're saying you're taking suburbs and you're taking cities in addition to them. However, it can also be understood, just to be fair, to take suburbs for the cities. You're taking them as cities. You're taking something for the use of cities. So I can understand that. It could be translated or understood that way as well. Verse 3, enclosures versus suburbs, again, for their cattle. Why would you take a suburb or city for your cattle? It's an enclosure. And in addition, it's adding here for their goods. So that wasn't originally there. Verse 4, this confirms that the Septuagint is correct in verse 2, as it lines up with of and not for. Okay, let's read this. In the suburbs of the cities. Yeah, again, it's lining up with verse 2. They're not for the cities, they're the suburbs of the cities. You're turning these suburbs into cities. Verse 5, your city. Um, your city. Okay, and your city versus the midst. The midst. Um, the city in the midst. The midst of this, or versus the, your city versus the city. So that's the distinction, is that it is your city. The ownership is to you versus the city. It's just a city. And then it says here, the midst of this, the suburbs and cities are in the middle of these dimensions described here. The city equals the suburbs and the city in the midst. Um, this is correct. It is simply worded differently. Okay, you know what? That wasn't even a difference. It's just something I forgot to ignore. So it's too late to ignore that now. Verse 11, continuous difference. And it's a significant difference on top of that. It's saying here, unintentionally, you shall appoint to yourself cities. They shall be to you cities of refuge for the slayer to flee to, everyone who has killed another unintentionally. So again, it was unintentional versus unaware. How can you kill someone unaware? Maybe they were drunk, they weren't in the right state of mind. It's hard to say, but this opens up the door, the possibility to a loophole where someone could say, I was unaware. No, it's unintentional, not unaware. Verse 14, other side versus this side. So is it this side or the other side? Well, it's saying it's the other side of the Jordan, meaning possibly the east side of it. It's hard to say. That's just an assumption, but it's the other side. And an addition is shall be cities of refuge. Um, so it says you shall assign 3 cities. It's saying that these are cities of refuge in the Masoretic. This is a given. Why? Because it is mentioned later on in verse 15, just in the next verse here, for a place of refuge. So it's not exactly omitted in the Septuagint. It is described later on, whereas the Masoretic, they mention it a lot earlier, or not a lot, but just a verse earlier. Verse 17, there's an addition of the word throwing. If he smite him with throwing a stone, you don't have to throw a stone. You could just use it like a weapon and not have to actually let go of it. Um, verse 23 says, unawares. If a man die unawares and it should fall upon him, um, he should die, but he was not his enemy. So this is a recall, or it harkens back to what the Masoretic was actually saying, where he was unaware. Oh, look at that. So we're going to have to look at this honestly, and because it's saying seeing not in the Masoretic, a man may die seeing him not. So it does seem to imply, just to be honest, it is saying if you're unaware, it means it's you didn't do so intentionally. So uh, I'm going to allow that. That sounds like it is unintentional. However, when we introduce another understanding of seeing not, this introduces a loophole where you can kill somebody and close your eyes and say, well, I didn't see him. So technically, I should not be judged by the full measure of the law because I didn't see him according to this law here. If you don't see him, if you close your eyes and you throw a stone, you're not guilty. No, there's no loophole here that you can just close your eyes. No, you're unaware of it, meaning unintentionally, or it's just not known to you, perhaps. And it says, and it should fall upon him, uh, the stone, and he should die. So again, verses, and it cast upon him, and it and cast upon him that he die. So how can you cast a stone on someone versus it just falls on him? Casting a stone is like you're aiming a stone. That's just my understanding of it. Could be a modern vernacular understanding of the word to cast a stone. It's like throwing it intentionally, like aiming a pitch if you're throwing a ball in baseball. Verse 25, who they anointed, it says here, death of the high priest, whom they anointed, versus, I should say, no, it doesn't say, it says who they anointed. Okay. And the congregation whom they anointed with the holy oil. Okay. So it is whom. So they anointed this high priest. He is the individual. He's the person they anointed with the holy oil, set apart oil, versus which was anointed. Which was anointed. Um, I think it's saying the same thing, to be honest. Okay, verse 27. There's an addition of the blood, revenger, not just avenger. I'm sorry, it's not talking about that. It's referring to he is not guilty. He's not guilty, period. But here it's saying he's not guilty. He shall not be guilty of blood. So he could be guilty of something else. But here it's just saying he's not guilty at all. There's no, it's not being, not giving a possibility of being guilty of blood. It's just not guilty. He's not guilty, period. But here in the Masoretic, it's saying, well, he's not guilty of blood, but he could be guilty of something else potentially. So there, again, it's opening the door to a lot of different loopholes. Verse 29, there's an omission of in these things. So again, this word isn't actually in there in the original. That was added by the translators because they knew of the Septuagint. They're aware of what it is said here, what is written there. Gives more credence to this translation. Uh, Verse 30, we have an omission that he should die. One witness shall not testify against a soul that he should die. So, shall not testify against any person to die. Okay. Shall not testify. So, one person cannot testify against a person to die. But it says that he should die, that you cause him to die. Again, it says that in brackets. That wasn't originally there. Verse 31, accept ransoms for life from a murderer who is worthy of death. You don't accept ransoms um, from a murderer, versus take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer. So there's a big difference here, which is guilty of death. So we can see it's one thing to accept a ransom from a murderer. It's another thing altogether to take satisfaction for the life of a murderer. That is actually a big difference. And it also says worthy, worthy of death. Who is worthy of death versus guilty of death. Um, I think it's similar. However, the big difference here, and I'm going to make a note here that it is a big difference. It's a big difference because it is not scriptural, because the Israelites could rejoice over a victory due to the death of someone. For example, Haman in the book of Esther was hung, and they celebrated. We can take satisfaction. You can't take satisfaction for the life of a murderer, but you don't rejoice in your heart. Those are two very different things. The distinction is you have the trust and the contentment in God. You focus on praising and giving glory and honor to his name, that he will do what is right in your situation. In this instance, he's taking revenge. He's the one who is putting to death, for example. But if you're rejoicing because your enemy has fallen, this is human nature. It's not focusing on Yah, but you're focusing on your own human effort, that you are the one who killed them and you're rejoicing over them. It's not God's doing, it's your own revenge. And the demise of our enemy is the focus, not the victory of God and how great he is. It's focusing on, oh, let's kill this enemy. We're taking satisfaction because we've killed our enemy. No, that's not what it's even saying at all in the verse. It's actually saying if you accept a ransom. So if a murderer is rich, billionaire, millionaire, and they give you a lot of money, just, don't put me to death. Take this ransom and let me go. Just, I'll be innocent because I've paid you off. It's a bribe, essentially. It's what it is. Verse 32 is a repeat of 31. You shall not accept a ransom to excuse his fleeing to the city of refuge, so that he should again dwell in the land until the death of the high priest. So, um, again, this is a person who's worthy of death. He shall be surely put to death. This person is guilty. This person um, does not have an out. He can't just bribe you out of it so that he could seek refuge. And he's not already in the land. I suppose there has to be, it's the timing where they are and when they're there for an appointed time until the death of the high priest. Sounds like this person might have broken the rules of this city of refuge. Perhaps they left thinking they can just roam around and not respect this law. Verse 33 is a big difference because we have an omission of the word with murder. You shall not pollute the land, the Masoretic, with what? It doesn't say. But here in the Septuagint, it says what the land is being polluted with murder, because this blood, innocent blood, pollutes the land. You can't spill human blood on this whatever land it is, and uh, there's no consequences. It actually pollutes the land. There's a consequence for that. God uh, sees this blood. He He observes it. It changes the like constitution of the land. It pollutes the land. He recognizes it as such. Okay, next is the word omit. A word has been omitted in 34. Shall defile not, therefore the land which you shall inhabit. No, it's don't defile it. You shall not. This is a command. Don't do it. This is a hard and fast rule. He is he is encouraging them. He is commanding them. Uh, he's telling them, don't do this. He's commanding them. It's a direct order to Israel. And then again, another omission. I dwell. Uh, wherein I dwell. He's saying, wherein I dwell in this land. He's not just dwelling in this land. He's dwelling in the middle of them, actually, because the tabernacle, I believe, is there present. For I, Jehovah, or I, Yahweh. No, I am. Yeah, that's an important word that is missing. I am. He is the I am. He is the being. Perhaps it's referring to that, but it says I am. Yeah. So that's all I have to present to you for this chapter 35. Up next, we have the final chapter of this book. It's quite exciting. Hopefully, Yah willing, I can finish this chapter and upload that shortly. We'll begin a new book tomorrow, then, the book of Deuteronomy. So thank you very much for your time. May Yah bless you and make your way prosperous. You've been watching Secrets Revealed, the Holy Bible, and I pray shalom on you and peace to you from Yah and Yeshua, the Anointed One, Jesus Christ, our Messiah, Son of God.